start in just a minute when we have one more commission. Welcome to the Salt Lake City Planning Commission meeting for September 10th, 2025. If you want to speak on an item that's on our agenda tonight, there are cards that you can fill out that are at the door where you can indicate to us that you want to speak. Otherwise, when we announce your item, you can just go to the podium and speak. Okay, first thing we're going to do is have roll by the secretary.
Commissioners, when I call your name, will you please indicate you're here? Jeffrey Barrett? Here.
Amy Berry,
Here.
Amy Burrows,
Here.
Landon Krasik,
Here.
Richard Leverett,
Here.
Lila Rosenthal,
Present.
Brian Scott,
Here.
and we do have a quorum.
Thanks. The next thing we do is report of the chair. So here's my report. Commissioner Mike Christensen's term has ended. He served a 4-year term with the Planning Commission. So we thank him for his service. And now we're recruiting for new commissioners from Salt Lake City Council Districts 1 and 2. So if you're represented by Victoria Petro or Alejandro Puy, then you could be on the Salt Lake City Planning Commission. So to apply for that, you just need to go to look up Salt Lake City Planning Commission. At the bottom, there's how to join the commission, and you can apply there. And those are big, active, important neighborhoods in our city, so we need representation for them. So please do apply if you're interested. The next item is a report from the vice chair.
I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is a report of the director.
I do not have anything to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the open forum. So if any commissioners want to discuss something that's not on the agenda or something you want training on in the future, you can raise it now. Okay. We'll talk about that again next time. The next item on the agenda is we have our consent agenda. There are 4 items on the consent agenda today. The first is an extension request for Elliott South Plan Development and Design Review. The second item is an extension request for Elliott North Plan Development and Design Review. The third item is a plan development and preliminary subdivision plat at 892 South West Temple. And the other is approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting, August 27th, 2025. So one of these items has a public hearing, and that's just the plan development and preliminary subdivision plat at approximately 892 South West Temple. If anyone's interested in speaking on this item, you can approach the podium and state your name and give us your comment. Go ahead. The podium back there, the wooden one. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, Michaela. You just run through the classes late at night, but anyway, so yes, she wanted me to close. That's what I meant. So.
Thank you. No, thank you. Anyone else want to speak on that item? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. I don't know that we need a response from the applicant for that public comment. I don't think so. So I close the public hearing, and now we're ready for some action by the commission.
If I may, I'd rather this be moved to I motion that this request, that this is application, that would be PLN PCM 2024-01382 and PLN SUB 2024-0103, the Marigold Planned Development and Preliminary Subdivision, be moved to the regular agenda.
Okay, there's a motion by Commissioner Rosenfield. Any second?
Wolf.
I don't hear a second, so we will not vote on that.
In that case, I recommend we approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion by Commissioner Krajicek to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion or a second on that?
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Scott. Any activity on that motion? Okay, we'll vote. Commissioner,
Point of inquiry, or I
Yes.
guess. So with that, does that mean I am obligated to vote yes on the full consent agenda?
no,
Okay.
you can vote separately on the items.
Okay.
Is that clear? Do you
That's
back me up on
correct.
that, legal? Okay, thank
Yes.
you. Okay, let's start with Commissioner Barrett.
Yes, on the consent agenda.
Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett.
Yes.
Commissioner Krajicek.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
I also will vote yes, so that the consent agenda items are unanimously approved. So the next thing we do is the regular agenda. Thank you for coming. The first item on our regular agenda is zoning text amendment for parking dimensions and off-street parking standards manual update. So if you'll introduce yourself and tell us about this amendment.
Danette, can you come log me in? It'll just take a moment or two to get the presentation up. Yep. All right, good evening, Commission. My name is Megan Booth. I'm a principal planner in the Planning Division. This is a zoning text amendment for parking dimensions, off-street parking standards manual update. It's not up. Let's see. Danette, do you know if I can drag it or? Okay, let's start that again. This is a zoning text amendment to clarify driveway parking eligibility for single-family, two-family, and townhome-type dwellings, expand tandem parking allowances, and update parking space dimensions to align with current engineering standards. This proposed amendment is in response to SB 181, which limits local regulations of parking and design, and HB 368, which requires local engineering standards to be codified. The proposed amendments will affect 21A 44060A3, 21A 44060A15, and 21A 62 of the zoning ordinance, as well as the off-street parking standards manual. Before we begin, I just want to give the formal definition of tandem parking in the parking ordinance, or in the zoning ordinance. It's the inline parking of one vehicle behind another in such a way that one parking space can only be accessed through another parking space, just to give you some context. So when you think of parking, you normally think of regular parking, tandem parking, as shown on the screen. So SB 181 required that tandem parking must be counted towards the minimum parking requirements, and that cities cannot require a garage for owner-occupied single-family homes. And the zoning code currently requires off-street parking spaces, but doesn't require the home to have a garage. So we already meet that requirement. And then the parking stall dimensions are limited to a maximum of 9 feet by 20 feet for uncovered spaces and 10 feet by 20 feet for covered spaces, so within a garage or carport. Our parking dimensions already meet this requirement, but they are located within the parking manual, so that is why it needs to be codified. HB 368, adopted during the legislative session, requires that any enforceable engineering or development standard be formally adopted by ordinance. So historically, our off-street parking manual functioned as an administrative living document, but it hasn't been codified. So we need to update it. We updated it, and we need formal legislative action for it to remain legally enforceable, and we must complete this by December 31st. So what we did is, in the zoning code, we allowed tandem parking for all uses. We count the driveway parking toward the required parking if the driveway leads to at least one parking stall behind the front line of the building. I have a visual on the next slide to show that. For single-family, two-family, row house, and townhome uses. And then we defined what unobstructed means, because that's used in state law. So that refers to a parking space that has no permanent barriers, such as walls, posts, planters, or built-in storage, that would require the space to be smaller than the required stalls, which I mentioned previously. So when I say behind the front line of the building, here's a visual for you. You have your driveway, sidewalk, your driver approach. We are requiring at least one parking stall behind the front line of the building to count driveway toward the minimum parking requirements. So that could be in a garage, but it does not have to be. In the off-street parking manual, we're also allowing tandem parking for all uses and adding that visual of regular versus tandem parking to make that clear. Like I mentioned, the parking stall dimensions in the parking manual already comply, so we're just going to leave those as is in the manual. We did do some stylistic edits and updated references. We did incorporate some department comments, and we made some minor edits and reference updates. So there were some internal notes and some comments to code that may or may not exist anymore. So we went through and made sure everything is consistent. So what is not changing? The parking minimums for uses is not changing. We're not changing our landscaping, screening, or lighting standards, not changing our surface standards or any materials requirements, not changing our driveway or approach standards, and no changes to any ADA standards. And the parking standards for existing home will not change unless, there's a change in use of that home, which would require more or less parking, or like an addition, for example. So with that, my recommendation is to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to adopt the zoning code amendments and the off-street parking manual. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Since we don't have an applicant, I'm not going to have clarifying questions right now. We'll go right to the public comment. If anyone wants to speak on this text amendment, you can approach the podium and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. And now the commissioners can ask questions of the staff or discuss the item, make a motion. I have a question. Are there other things that have been just manuals? Are there other that need to now be codified so that they can be enforced besides this parking standards manual?
I'm not sure what other manuals other divisions or departments use in their everyday use, but this is specifically for engineering standards. So the engineering department has adopted National Historic or national engineering standards. Those were adopted already by the City Council of Public Utilities. Has something similar. We did go out for department comments on this with all the different departments, have them look at the manual, and anything that they felt needed to be added, we did add what we could within the scope of the amendment and state law.
I mean, does like the planning division have other manuals like this that have been like a living document but not codified that we should expect to see going forward, or this is it?
No.
Okay. That's it. This is the only one. Okay.
I have a couple questions. First of all, to clarify, when we talk about one stall behind the front line of a building, is that required to be covered or enclosed in some way?
No, it is not required to be covered. It just has to meet the stall dimensions to be considered a parking stall.
Okay. So that's question one. Is there anything else? Is there a reason why this approach was not evaluated for all zones, where as opposed to just single family and two family homes?
The state saw the parking requirements as some cities as being a barrier to affordable housing.
Yes.
So they minimized the parking requirements and garage requirements in response to that. So that's why it was only looked at for single family, two family, and townhome developments right now. So that is why we didn't go outside of that scope, because we were responding to the legislation that came out.
Okay. In other zones, are parking requirements, do they tend to be as relaxed as we currently are making for these lower density zones, or will they be more strict after we adopt this?
Our parking requirements are based on our parking chapter and the use of the building. With the tandem parking, we did allow that for all uses in all zones, so that makes parking, I don't want to use the word easier, but less restrictive in that way. For example, a retail establishment could put tandem parking spots on the side of their parking lot, as long as the vehicle could enter and exit unobstructed, and it would count. So I would say yes, in some ways it does. Yeah.
But in terms of, my apologies, in terms of the allowance that parking be in front of the building, which is effectively what the other part of this does, the non-tandem parking part of this does, that would still be prohibited in higher density zones.
In our zones that have design standards that require the parking to be behind the front line of the building,
Yes.
those would still be in play. So,
Okay.
yes.
And in terms of the amount of space that is taken up by parking, as a general rule, would this change reduce the amount of space taken up by parking or taken up by paved areas, call it, because the driveway can now be used as an additional parking spot, and maybe developers or those building homes will need less to take up less space further back?
I think in terms of paved surface, the dimensions that we have were smaller than what the state required. So, I'm trying to think through this. It really depends on the development and what the use is and the number of stalls. I think this amendment more addresses a barrier to parking for housing more than looking at, paved surface overall in the city.
Barrier to parking for... Okay. I'll have to think on that. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, show your drawing of the front line of the building. Currently, if two cars can park on the driveway, if there's enough space would those count as off-street parking right now? Would two spaces count as off-street parking right now?
No, we would require the parking spaces within the garage would count.
Okay, so it does, like, essentially now, this house could have 3 off-street parking instead of just counting as 1.
Right.
So you don't have to build a new driveway, but your driveway will count now.
Right, and if you had an ADU, for example, you could count your driveway parking space.
Okay, so, and parking space is defined by the space, like how big it is, and it has to be unobstructed, and it has to have a surface? Has to have one of those surfaces?
Yeah, the surface requirements did not change.
Okay, so if somebody just, can you have like a grass driveway? Like if you just had sod?
No, driveways have
different
to be hard
cases.
surfaced.
Okay. Or like the chipped concrete, or no?
It has to be concrete or asphalt,
Driveways have to already.
or concrete strips.
Okay. Okay, and unobstructed means the space that your driveway has to lead towards behind the front of your house has to be like accessible. Like you can have junk in the way, but you can't have planters. You can't have anything that's constructed in the way, right?
Unobstructed, the reason why we had to define that was more for tandem parking than parking for single-family homes. So what that means is that we had to define unobstructed because state law uses it in its definition of tandem parking, that it must be unobstructed. So we wanted to make sure we had that defined. So for example, if you had a parking garage and you had a pillar, you couldn't count like a spot behind the pillar because if there was a car there, they couldn't get out. So it has to be unobstructed. You have to be able to get out. So we use the state law's definition, which has walls, posts, planters, or built-in storage.
So the parking space behind the front of the building, does that have to be unobstructed for your driveway to count?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And to make sure, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to read the full text of the amendment, so I want to
That's okay.
make sure that I'm understanding. This does not change any sort of compliance question about where people park actively. It's just about where people build parking, correct?
Right. This does not change the way we do compliance or enforcement.
Right. So currently somebody can park in front of a garage door. In the future, somebody will be able to park in front of a garage door, but going forward, that parking stall will count towards their parking minimum, whatever that is set already in the code.
Yes.
Got you. So my understanding is that in theory, this may allow for narrower driveways, narrower garages, and therefore narrower lots under certain circumstances, because if a garage only has to be 1 car wide and then you can count the driveway as adding 1 additional parking space, that means that you don't need a double wide carport.
Possibly, but we looked at this also for townhome and row house developments, and we wanted to avoid, lots of, if we didn't require the space behind the front line of the home, that could have a negative consequence of a lot of parking in those driveways in front. So that's why we required the parking stall behind the front line of the building. So yes, if the lot is narrower and they have a garage, they can park in there, or they would have to make the lot wider to pull to the side.
Okay. Are there any current design restrictions on the width of a driveway in front of the front line of a building?
Yes, there are driveway standards in
Okay.
21A44.
Excellent, thank you.
Sorry. I was a little unclear. So in the actual text where it says that tandem parking is allowed for all land uses, including residential and non-residential, but then right below it, it says each set of 2 tandem parking spaces shall be designated for a specific residential unit. So I'm wondering why it has non-residential included.
So we want to make sure that if there's a tandem parking space and there's 2 units, that each unit has its own space. But we want to also allow tandem parking for all uses in the city. So, but we want to make sure that we're specifying per unit. So we just want to make sure we're being specific, and that also was in our existing language.
I guess, why would we be allowing tandem uses for or tandem parking for other uses besides residential in a city?
Like the example I gave earlier, like you have a retail, you have a parking garage that serves mixed use, for example, and you have a required number of parking spaces and you have a parking garage, you could design your garage with tandem parking spaces and have them count towards not only the residential use, but other uses within the building.
Okay. Design-wise, tandem parking is always kind of a nightmare to actually use, and residential is the one situation where I think it can make sense, because then it's actually two people who are like communicating, who are all dealing with getting in and out. But it doesn't make sense to me to expand that outside of that to say that it can be used in other.
Well, so you know how on streets you have on-street parking and it's tandem, you can pull in and pull out. This just allows it to be within a parking lot or a parking garage as well.
Tandem parking on street. I'm not sure what you mean.
Parking lots or in parking garages.
So are you
Well-
saying that you could have like a parallel parking like situation within a?
So my experience, at least, is that only exists in places where you're basically valeting or like leaving your keys so someone else can move your car.
So are you talking about just residential uses that have?
No, not residential uses.
Not random. Yeah, I think that would be on the person parking, knowing they're parking in that stall. And I mean, it just allows it. So, but so it has to be unobstructed. So what that means is you could, but the other person could pull out. There would be nothing preventing them from doing that. I mean, residential might be different because you usually see tandem parking in a garage, so I know what you're saying.
Each space is unobstructed.
Yeah, no, I understand it in the residential context. I don't understand it in like a commercial context. I don't see how that works without, I mean, if what we're saying is like, we're going to have tandem parking and you can pull into that first spot as long as you're gambling that you will be able to get back out of it at some point, I think that's a really bad design decision that we shouldn't create that precedent. I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding it though.
Oh, I'm think there might be a miscommunication happening. Are you saying that unobstructive in a like the more commercial context means that you could pull out from that spot?
Yes.
Okay. In the residential, we were talking about like planters as the unobstructed thing. So in the context that I'm understanding from you, you're saying you could park essentially parallel parking within a parking garage and people could get out at any time whenever they wanted. And what I'm hearing you say is like tandem, meaning you pull one car in, the other car pulls in, and the first car can't pull out at all. So you're both thinking something different, and how do we clarify what?
Well, but the first one isn't tandem parking because you don't have to drive through that other spot to get to it. That's just parallel parking.
Yeah, in the
But Megan is talking
guidelines
about-
I'm looking at right now, they differentiate between parallel parking and tandem parking. And tandem parking, where both cars can pull out at any time, is, I mean, that's not tandem parking, that's parallel parking, right?
But correct
So
me,
I'm agreeing with Brian, I'm confused.
Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, though, the tandem parking, it has to be assigned to a unit. It's not an
Yeah.
entire free-for-all. Does that make sense?
Right.
Well, yeah, and
Not like, right.
I understand that's kind of why I'm asking, is because those two sections seem to contradict one another, where one says it's okay for all land uses and for non-residential, but then right below it says, but it has to be assigned to a residential thing. So I'm wondering if the intent is to have it be broader, or if the intent is specifically residential, why we don't take out saying it's allowed for non-residential in all land uses. Those just seem to conflict in my mind.
So I'm looking at the amended section, and it says tandem parking is allowed for all land uses, including residential and non-residentials. The parking spaces may be designed as tandem parking spaces, provided that the 2 tandem spaces shall be counted as 2 required parking spaces if the space is unobstructed, as defined in section 21A 62040. So that's why we're adding that definition with Utah State Code 10-9A534, which that is what refers to unobstructed. And then we added that each set of 2 tandem parking spaces shall be designated for a specific residential use or unit to avoid that one having to pull out for the other for a specific unit. It would be for one. So unobstructed is, and I'll pull the state code section too, if that helps.
Well, no, and I understand, unobstructed isn't my question. My question is, we're saying allowed for all land uses, specifically non-residential. Then right below that, but it will have to be, these 2 units are assigned to a residence. So that's the conflict that I'm trying to understand and clarify.
The language says single dwelling unit. Does that limit it to residential, or is it any unit? Just because it doesn't say residential, it says dwelling unit in what I'm looking at.
Can you clarify your question?
So Commissioner Scott was saying that there's a conflict in the language because it says all residential, non-residential. Then it says it has to be assigned to a single residential unit. But I believe the language says single dwelling unit. So does dwelling unit apply to residential unit, or does it apply to all units? If it says dwelling.
Dwelling unit. So both stalls wouldn't be assigned to a unit.
It says residential, doesn't it? Where does it say dwelling?
I'm in
For
staff
a
report.
specific residential unit is what it says.
So I do want to clarify that it looks like when we're referring to unobstructed, right, we refer to those 2 sections, the section that we're adding to Salt Lake Code and the section that we're adding to, or that exists in Utah Code. Both of those really just refer to the constraints on the actual space for parking. They do not refer to the ability to pull into or out of a parking space. So when we talk about tandem parking for any purpose, if it is tandem parking, you can have like sequential rows of, well, when I was living in South Salt Lake, we had, my apartment complex, we had tandem parking. I pulled into it, my roommate pulled into it. We could not pull out beyond it because there was no opening. My car was facing a wall. There was parking on this side, parking on that side. The only requirement for unobstruction means that parking, that on either side of me, that the width between the 2 parking spaces on either side of me has to be at minimum 10 feet. So there's no requirement that the front car in a tandem parking space be able to pull out for residential or non-residential uses. If I am reading the amendment correctly.
So in state law, unobstructed means a parking space that has no permanent barriers that would unreasonably reduce the size of an available parking space.
Right. So.
And then it says in section 4, and then it refers to the sizes.
Right. But that doesn't refer to the ability to enter or exit the space. So a 10 by 20 foot cube with walls on 3 sides and a car behind it is technically legal. And that would be an entirely, I understand what you're saying. That would be permissible both for residential and for non-residential uses.
Well, no. So my concern has nothing to do with the obstruction. It has nothing to do with
I think we understand your concern.
the physical shape or orientation of the lot. It has to do with the fact that it says we're allowing this for non-residential, and then right below that it says, but the parking space have to be assigned to a residence.
I don't think that it's saying it has to be assigned to a residence.
That's a
Just saying if there's a residential unit, that those 2 parking spaces in tandem need to be assigned to that residential unit.
Okay, so this is
Does that make sense?
So if that's what it's,
Saying all tandem needs to just be assigned to residentials.
so we're saying that you can put tandem lots in a strip mall, and
Yeah.
that's fine, and someone can pull in and someone pulls in behind them, and then they have to deal with that.
Yes, or there's valet situations. We've all been to a big city.
With respect, I mean, I actually disagree. I think I would support that. I'm fine with a tandem parking spot in a strip mall. I think that description, to me, would disagree with the plain reading of the statute as we're defining it. Each set of 2 tandem parking spaces shall be designated for a specific residential unit, not if there is if the tandem parking spot is fulfilling the requirement for a residential unit, then it shall be designated for a specific residential unit. It shall be regardless of any, and I mean, the fact is that this text is not amended. This comes from an earlier version of the statute. But to my mind, the plain reading here is, yes, we're allowing for residential and non-residential uses, but if you want to use it for a non-residential use, you still need to designate it to a residential unit, which is a little bit silly.
Which page, which line are you looking at?
So I'm looking at amending subsection 21A 44.060.15. That's line 33. 15, section 15, tandem park, section 15, so starting at line 35, tandem parking is allowed for all land uses, including residential and non-residential, but under line 41, subsection B, each set of 2 tandem parking spaces shall be designated for a specific residential unit. Subsection B is modifying section 15. It's a provision of the allowance for all land uses, and therefore would prohibit, to my eye, tandem parking spaces unless they are specifically designated to a specific residential unit.
Okay, I hear you. So I think we can work on tweaking that language.
Yeah,
So that it's like for a specific residential unit, the 2 parking spaces in tandem need to be tied to that unit or something like that.
I think that's what it says now.
I think the first part and the second part are in conflict. It says you can use it for non-residential, but then there's no way to use it for non-residential because it has to be designated.
I would say,
That was our intent.
I-
I think that it's wonky language in B.
I mean, I would support that, right? Like, I would support a way to allow non-residential uses to have tandem parking spaces without having to delegate them specifically. However, it seems some of my fellow commissioners would be opposed to that, so I do want to make sure that we have some sort of
I don't know that-
barometer on the room before we take this back and
What if-
revise about which direction the commission as a whole would want to go.
I don't know that anyone has an opinion stated yet, except for just we're trying to clarify the text.
I've never done tandem parking in a
Sorry.
public park lot. That sounds like it's a fight waiting to happen, which people fighting about cars is so stupid, but I've never done it before. Does that really happen in other cities? Do you do tandem? Like double parking?
We're thinking about it in terms of a retail concept and not an office concept. I think there are a few office buildings downtown that have tandem parking now.
Yeah.
There's been some requests in development applications that we've had to do that. So maybe, may I suggest, could we do tandem parking and then have A be residential and B be non-residential? And I could modify that language before it goes to the city council.
You could have, if you had tandem parking and like the employees park first because they get there first or something and they leave after, I don't know.
Yeah,
right? Like it could happen.
I mean, I do trust ultimately, I think, civil society to work that information out, right? Like if a business wants to implement tandem parking, they should be able to implement tandem parking. And then if fights get started over that on their own head, be it. I do like that we have a restriction when we're talking about tandem parking that's fulfilling a residential parking requirement that needs to be shared units. I don't want people who aren't roommates or living together, having to fight over residential tandem parking. But for the purposes of, for example, a strip mall, I think it's fine if we just say, like, if a business wants to get into that quagmire, they are welcome to do so. And we can, frankly, I mean, I doubt that many will actually choose to go that path because it ends up being such a mess. But I don't really think we should have parking requirements at all. So maybe I'm not the best person to make the argument on this case.
Well, you've talked me into it, and now I agree with you. I think if it's a non-residential use, then fine. But if it's a residential use, they should be assigned to the same unit. That makes sense.
I think, I do think that would be two things. One, I think that we need to clarify what it is for residential, how that ties to assigning things to the lot. Two, we need to decide if what we're really saying is you can do tandem parking anywhere. And I disagree with that, but I think that at the least we would need to go in and look at specific situations, how that works in terms of office, how that works in terms of a retail environment and things like that, because I do think it's setting a bad precedent. And I think what will happen is that lots of places get built by developers, and parking is often like the defining characteristic that sets how big developers can build buildings and how large they're going. And so they will say, oh, well, technically by the code, we can do this. And then when people move in there and are trying to use it, it will create a whole lot of problems. And so I don't think that it's not as simple as saying like, oh, they're going to build this and then use it themselves. I think that it will create a lot of problems down the line to
I
do
think
that.
provided that covers that situation though, because they would have to have it A, unobstructed, and B, if there are residential units within the development, then they would have to be assigned to a specific unit. So you wouldn't have people coming in using the other uses because they have to be assigned to a unit.
Which we can clarify that B, line 41, we can clarify it. The state is telling us that we need to allow tandem parking. We want to make sure that for residential units, the users of those two spaces have control over getting in and getting out.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We want to have the unobstructed language because some fool may throw a pole in. I don't know.
No, and
Yeah, I agree.
Doesn't that
Well, so
situation here, I think getting
no, because my
into
question is then like the non-commercial use. So say there's a building.
Commercial use.
Or sorry, yeah, commercial use.
The commercial.
Say there's a building that has no residential, that does have tandem parking. That's what I'm saying is my concern.
And in those uses in large cities, there are employees to manage the parking, tandem or not, within.
So it would
I don't
be-
think that's necessarily zoning to get into how those tandem parking spaces are going to work within a parking garage in a building.
There are different rules, though, for valet spaces, too. Like, you can get an approval for a smaller spaces if you're in a valet situation, right? So that's something that we also define in the manual.
Yeah, in my mind, it's something where there's someone managing it, like a valet type thing, is a different situation than just like pull into the parking lot and there's tandem parking. Is that? And you're saying that's on them to how they deal with that.
Yes, because the state is asking us
I don't.
to put it on
Sorry.
them.
I don't think we need to play nanny state to commercial users. People are able to figure out these issues, right? And like maybe it's going to cause controversy, maybe it'll cause an argument or two, but I don't think it is, as a rule, our job to try and smooth over all of the rough edges of living in a city, and being, allowing the construction of tandem parking when commercial interests believe that it's appropriate, believe that that property is still marketable and saleable.
Well, but we both agree that this language doesn't allow tandem parking in
I agree that
non-residential.
this language
needs to be
is
worked.
problematic. I think that the issue is that there are sort of two sides. One side, it seems like, really wants to just remove the authorization for commercial tandem parking entirely without further study. Would that be? Do you think that that's a fair description of your position? Yes. So my position is we need to fix it so that for residential units only, we need to have we need to like designate the 2 tandem parking spots for the same unit. But for commercial uses, we can kind of let the commercial users figure that out.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just under B, you say for tandem parking spaces in residential, in residential properties, the 2 tandem space, it's, you just clarify there that B only applies to residential.
So with that, I think I would be ready to make a motion.
Although I think that tandem parking spaces in commercial is ridiculous, but
So real
I guess
quick on
that's not
that,
for us to.
real quick, one last thing on that. I think that the fact that we are concerned about making sure that there aren't 2 people in 2 adjacent apartments who tandem park behind one another, because that's going to cause such a conflict, means that we shouldn't create situations where 2 people who don't have a clue who the other person are going to tandem park behind each other.
I think, let me clarify that. So both parking stalls would have to be assigned to the same unit. In a tandem situation for residential, both stalls would have to be assigned to the same unit.
Right?
So there wouldn't be confusion between.
Exactly. No, I understand that. And my point is that we're doing that because we see that being a conflict. But then we're saying, in the commercial context, we don't need to manage that.
So I just want to clarify so everybody knows what the state law did. So the state law says that a municipality may not restrict unobstructed tandem parking from satisfying 2 parking spaces as part of a minimum parking space requirement. So that's all that we're trying to do. We're not trying to assign or anything. Now, does it make
The
sense?
state doesn't designate residential or uses or anything like that?
Nope.
So in that case, my question would be, is even the restriction that we are providing about residential units aligned with what we are permitted to do as a city?
Sorry, say that again. I was reading.
Yeah, so if the state is saying you cannot prohibit tandem parking spaces from fulfilling the requirement, what we are doing is we are conditioning the fulfillment of that requirement on tandem parking spaces.
Correct.
Is that condition still beyond what the state law permits?
No. There's
Okay.
nothing that says you can't do that.
Okay. So in theory, we could put a similar condition on commercial parking. Not that I do not believe that we should, but we could, in theory, put an obligation of some sort.
Only thing the state law is saying is that we must allow unobstructed tandem parking to fulfill a minimum of 2 parking space requirements when asked.
And it doesn't say residential?
It refers, well,
I mean, isn't that about residential parking?
So it talks about space requirements for 1 and 2 family dwellings and what we can't limit beyond. And then it goes down to unobstructed. We cannot restrict the unobstructed tandem parking.
It doesn't restrict that. It's within a section about housing affordability, but it's not, doesn't say specifically within that section that it only applies in this. So.
But to my mind, saying you can only use your tandem parking spaces to fulfill your parking requirements if they are assigned to the same unit is imposing a restriction on tandem parking. Right? Right, what the state is saying is you cannot prohibit tandem parking from fulfilling the requirement of 2 parking lots. And what we are saying is tandem parking fulfills the requirements of 2 parking lots in residential areas, or when in residential areas is what we're intending. So assuming that we're going to go through we're going to make this modification. If and only if those 2 parking spots are the same residential unit, are assigned to the same residential unit. And my question is that does seem to me to be an additional restriction on when tandem parking can be used to fulfill the requirements under the code.
I don't know know if it's a
We,
restriction.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily restriction, but I mean, I can do case law research and see if there's anything that addresses that. Given that it's new law, I would bet the answer is no. So like many of the laws we got, we're trying to figure out how to implement them with the language we have.
Yes.
I'd say it's more like organizing than restricting.
I would personally agree, and I am certainly no enthusiast for the way that the state has come down on our agency or on our municipality, excuse me. And at the same time, it would not surprise me if this ended up going to court. If a developer wished to challenge this, it would not surprise me if it were struck down. And we can still do it as a statement of intention and with the hope that developers do not challenge it. And I am, of course, not a lawyer. I am a planner by training.
We're not forcing developers to put in this tandem parking
No, we're not.
for them, and
But
probably
we are.
in reality cheaper.
We're putting developers in a position where they can only use tandem parking in certain circumstances. Like, so for example, you know, a developer is building.
We're not doing that with this language. What we're doing with this language is saying that if you have a parking requirement of 2, we will allow the 2 tandem to count toward that requirement. Now, if the city wants to condition it as to, but if you have 2 parking spaces for a multifamily unit, they must be assigned to a unit. As of now, there's nothing that prevents us from doing that. I think you raise questions that say, let's do as much legal research on it as we can. But I suspect because it's so new, there's nothing out there.
I do suspect there's nothing out there.
Let me make a suggestion. Maybe it seems like this is probably going to get tabled for today. Can I get a straw poll? Can I ask for a straw poll on that? Are we feeling like tabling it or voting for it?
Why are we tabling it? I would like some explanation if we're tabling it.
I think that the language, the 2 sections of the language are in conflict.
And
Unless there's an attorney to say they're not in
Just want to
conflict, or you saying
remind
they're
you,
not?
we have a deadline of December 31st to get this through City Council. So if we could get a suggested language, I would be happy to take that and run with it.
So
I am.
Wait, can we get just like a slower, less interrupting from just everyone, if possible?
Apologies.
That would be great. That's all. Next.
Commissioner Leverett, did you want to say something?
Yes. One, I don't think that the language is a conflict. 2, the idea of we're spending time talking about commercial uses. I have parked in tandem spots before. The buildings with it. There are electronic queues. There are multiple queues. If someone building a residential building comes in and says, "I want to use tandem, but I only have, studio units in my building, and I want to count tandem spaces, but I have an app that does it," all those things could fly, and they can ask for it, and we can go through that process later. But arguing about this and trying to prescribe every particular use and every particular thing, every particular conflict we can have around tandem parking is not useful at all. We're not going to get anywhere. And so I don't think we need to table anything. I just think we need to accept the language as is, because there's not real conflict there. It's just tandem parking. Here's how it's assigned for residential units, because that's a good guiding factor. If they have something else to present, we have a body for that, and they can do those things. On a commercial side, if it counts towards the minimum and it's there, it'll be presented that way, and then we'll quibble about it at another time. But this just allows us to get in line with state law and move forward and let the staff do what they need to do. It's not a big issue for us, I think. So that's my answer to the straw poll.
I think I'm glad to see that your driveway will count as parking spaces, because driveways should have counted as parking spaces, off-street parking spaces all along. So I think that that's a good fix. If you're saying that those 2 are in conflict, I believe you, because you read this kind of stuff. So the straw poll, who wants to?
My straw poll
who
is
wants to table
continue to vote on it today. That's my straw poll.
Okay. Voting today? Tabling? Okay. It seems like tabling maybe won't win, but you can make a motion.
Okay, I will move. Let me see the motion seat. Based on the information, for parking dimension and off-street parking standards manual update, based on the information presented and discussion, I move the council recommends the city council adopt this request with the following amendment. For section 15, for section 15, subsection B, amend the existing text to append at the beginning, when a tandem parking space is being used to fulfill the requirement for parking based on a residential use, each shed of 2 tandem parking shall be designated for a specific residential use or substantively similar text.
Thank you. Any seconds?
I think that I would like to make a friendly motion just to kind of let the text be determined. Earlier, there was a suggestion to just split it into 2 sections that clarify commercial and residential. And so if there's just a very clear, completely separate sections articulating commercial and residential.
Krasik, you can't amend a motion that hasn't been seconded.
Oh,
Do you want
I
to second it
apologize.
first?
I will second it.
Okay.
Great.
And you're providing a friendly to, instead of modifying the text as I've suggested, instead separate out the commercial and the...
Yeah, just to, so there's no, because it seems like there was confusion between commercial and residential. So just clearly
do-
articulating each, where it sounds like yours was talking about residential. I'm saying yes, and articulate commercial as well separately, so it's clearer for people.
Can we not do commercial? Can we do residential and non-residential as it's written?
Sure. Yeah.
I
You
guess
accept that?
I would... To my mind, we don't, right, so the text as it's currently written does not include any requirements for commercial tandem parking. It's just, or the text as I think it was intended to be written right now does not include any requirements for commercial tandem parking. My personal feeling is that that is the appropriate direction to go, that we want to require the specific designation for a pair of tandem parking units for residential, and then for commercial, it's just a free-for-all. So to my mind, the easiest and most straightforward way to do that in the text would just to have section B say it only applies to residential.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
So that's a no to accepting the amendment.
That's a no to accepting the amendment, but is that okay?
That's
okay.
happy.
All right.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
that is what the attorney's office and planning believe that the code is saying at the moment. That is what the code is actually saying.
Fair enough. I think that's fair enough. I think that if the, I hear your point.
I just,
Okay, so now we have a motion.
Yes.
We have a motion by Commissioner Rosenfield. We have a second by Commissioner Krasik. Any other activity on this motion? Okay, we're going to vote. So Commissioner Rosenfield,
yes.
Commissioner Barrett,
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Nope.
Commissioner Barry,
No.
Commissioner Krasik,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows will also vote yes. So that passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes for, 2 votes against. So with that, is the amendment, is the language clear on what we
Was that
think it
the
should-
friendly amendment? No,
No.
that didn't go. It was
No.
your original amendment.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to say that for the record.
Yes, it was.
Hopefully we picked it up.
Go back and watch the video.
We'll watch that video. Okay, I see it. Yes, we did.
And she
We'll
did
get
say
some popcorn.
substantially similar language.
Or
So there's-
substantially similar language
yeah.
was at the end of it. But you get the point. Okay, good, thank you, thank you. Our next item is, our regular agenda is done. So now we are discussing, we have other business, which is the policies and procedures for the Planning Commission. And Ms. Bell, if you would take a moment to explain to us who's in charge of deciding what the policies and procedures are, how are they like made into rules? Do we eventually vote on them? Who has to say yes or no? That kind of stuff.
You bet I will. Can you hear me? Yes. Great. Yes. So your policies and procedures right now specify that to make any changes to your policies and procedures, you need a majority vote. So.
Just of
that
us,
is just-
we're the
Yes, you,
legislators
the planning
of this.
commission.
Okay.
You're in charge of your policies and procedures.
Okay.
You know, a meeting or so ago, you said we need a social media policy. Let's amend them, and we should be amending them anyway,
Great.
probably yearly. Honestly, back in 2023, we hadn't amended them for like 10 years. Okay, so thank you for asking me that. I do want to acknowledge that we put this on the agenda, and you did get an 18-page document at, I don't know, 2:30 or something like that. So don't get stressed out. You get to keep these for a week. Put them on your coffee table. Have a, discuss them at a party or something like that. Tonight, we're not asking you to necessarily adopt them unless you want to. I'm not suggesting that, actually. So I just thought I would just review. There are a lot of changes in there. There are a lot of hands in this document. And a lot of it, quite frankly, is just cleaning up language, making language more concise, maybe explaining an issue or a point a little bit better than we have been, and organizing items in a way that this is a useful document for you. One thing I want to say about this document, yes, there's some track changes in there. We did not play around with numbering and lettering. That is not denoted, okay? So just ignore that. We'll clean it up and make it look really pretty. We'll make sure that it's nice and organized. I want you to focus on the text, right? Okay, so black strike through, getting rid of it. If it's underlined in black, it is original text that has been moved within the document. If it's red underlined text, it is new verbiage. Any questions about that? Great, awesome. So on the 13th, you asked planning to basically address ex parte communication within the PMPs. I'm going to call them PMPs, please. And so we've done that. We've addressed social media, ex parte communication on various forms of public platforms. Let's see, what else did I want to say? I did outline about 9 substantive changes. Like I said, there's all kinds of rewrites. Here's one thing that I want the commission to think about. And I can pull these up too if you want. I didn't create a PowerPoint, didn't want you to be here all night, but happy to do it. Pull up the document, but you have it all in front of you. One thing that I added that the Landmark Commission does is they do allow a chair and a vice chair to serve 2 consecutive terms as chair or vice chair in that office. Basically, if you have a stellar chair, keep your stellar chair. If your chair wants to be the chair, great. Just something for you to consider because your PNPs didn't allow that. And I can go through these quickly, or you can just stop me, or if you want to discuss them. What do you think? Want to think about it? You can, okay. The other change was that the PNPs really was intermingling conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, and I broke those out because they really are different. And that section has been reorganized a bit to really separate, hey, the city code talks about conflicts of interest. Here's some examples of conflict of interest. And then the process and procedures, if you have a conflict of interest or if a member of the commission does, how you, disclose your conflict of interest, how the commission votes on that conflict of interest, how they may be disqualified. Oh, whoops, what if we don't have a quorum? We don't want to lose our quorum. How that person can still be a conflicted member, stay there and abstain from the vote, but you can still have action on that item. that is outlined. The same with a situation where there's ex parte communication, similar situation that is outlined. And I want that to be clear to you all too. So like I said, I know you're going to be reading this with your coffee. Okay, the fourth one, adding that commissioners on an approved leave of absence don't count when calculating quorum. Okay, that has actually posed a bit of an issue this year, right? So all we have to do is outline that in our policies and procedures, and we're good to go. Yay. All right, number 5, adding deadlines to written materials for staff reports and on the day of a meeting. Let's level the playing field here and be kind to our administrative staff. And honestly, the day of the meeting, we don't have time to take in 200-page documents and review them. So, yes, ma'am. Pardon? Yes. Oh, I'll find it. Okay, it is page 9 of 18. 9 of 18. Submission of written materials, right at the top of the page, where it's saying that, and this goes for anyone, residents, community councils, the president. It's saying that the
Public comments are like applicant materials. But like if I write to the planner like the day of the meeting and say, hey, there's only half the language in this report, can you fix that? Is that okay? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
Okay.
You're not- yeah, because you're the chair of the commission.
Well, I mean, I won't be.
Oh, well, you're a commissioner,
Okay. Thanks.
and we're so good at QC. Good God, if that happens, we should be slapped. We're talking about the public comments.
Okay. Public
Community
and
council
applicant.
comments.
Public
Whomever's
applicants and
comments
com-
that come
okay.
in. We need to level the playing field there.
Okay.
Okay, we need all the written materials in, right? If public wants them in the staff report, included in the staff report, they're gonna have to have it to planning staff by noon, the Wednesday before the meeting, basically a week before the meeting. Now, you get emailed other public comments. That's what we've been doing, right? It's just like boo, 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 boo. You're not going to read them. I can't read them sometimes. We're not going to get to consider them. However, the day of the meeting, we will forward everything to you that we received by noon via email.
By noon of the week.
No,
The day.
the day of. We will email them to you. Between 12 and the start of this meeting, we're still going to collect them. If we have to transmit to city council, great. We'll package those up with the transmittal, but you're not going to get emailed those comments, nor,
I feel like things that aren't sent to us because they come after noon shouldn't be part of the record for this meeting, because that's hardly seems fair. If somebody like, they want to appeal a decision and they're like, oh, well, at 3 o'clock I sent you evidence that this was blah, blah, blah. That shouldn't be record of this meeting, right?
it'll still be part of the record. Technically, we'll include it in the record, but that's why we want to add it in the policies and procedures and it all, I mean,
But will it be clear?
State law.
I can't.
State law requires that we continue to accept those even after the meeting.
And if they want to appeal us,
But
great,
it's clear
we'll go
when
to
you
court.
receive
I'm
them,
sure a judge will
right?
say,
Like in an appeal, if you're like, they didn't know that when they made that decision, like, that's a real defense to not having, like, it's part of the record, but it wasn't part of the record before our meeting.
I know what you're
know what I
saying,
mean?
but I should hope if we are challenged in court, that a reasonable judge will say, I'm sorry, your 200-page public comment that you submitted to the Planning Commission at 4:30 PM
Was submitted, like, it's submitted
wasn't
at 4
necessarily
See, an
considered
appeal
by the
is
commission.
different, and we have standard procedures for appeals, but if this is just a public comment coming in saying that they don't like something before the commission, then by state law, we still have to include that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, that is right.
Make it, just so everybody knows when you got it, though. That's what I'm saying.
You know what? The acoustics in this room. Can you scream into that mic? Right
No,
here.
just-
There's like this weird
it's
dead
fine.
spot.
It's
Okay.
fine. I'm good.
Okay, that's one big one. Yay. Let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, yes. Adding code requirements that if applicants do want to postpone an item, they are required under city code to pay notification fees.
Oh, they are?
So we outlined that. That's a
How much can that
substantive
be?
change. Just postage.
I mean, is it a lot?
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It just depends if you live next to a condo building. Just kidding. But
But this
doesn't-
isn't inventing that rule. This is just putting that, just
we're not
defining
inventing that rule, but we're just putting it here as an FYI.
Okay.
And city code does require it under the consolidated fee schedule.
Okay, thank you.
All right, consent agenda motion changes. There are some changes here. Now, I do actually want to go to that once I find the page. And if you find the page before I find the page, scream it out. Please. 12. For the win. Hold on. Oh, that pesky consent agenda. All right. Pretty much how it was written now. The existing language is that there can be kind of two votes, right? Like Commissioner Berry is like, I would like to take XYZ and move it to the regular agenda. Then there's a vote. Then there's another vote to approve the consent agenda. The proposal in here is that there's really one motion, okay? If someone wants to move something, okay, options in F, take a look. 31F on page 12. The chair calls for a motion. Possible motions are to approve all the items or approve all the items, but specifying any item to be removed from the consent to the regular, including in the motion whether the public hearing for that item remains open, if applicable, which it probably is.
So then the response of, so in this, earlier in this meeting, we had a similar situation where we were going to move, Commissioner Rosenfield, I had your first name, but not last name in my mind, wanted to remove an item from the consent agenda. So
Right.
in this framework, they would have said, I motion we approve the consent agenda except for this, which we removed to the normal.
Regular agenda, and to specify whether that public hearing should remain open or closed. Probably open.
So if the rest of the commission wants to say, no, we're not going to move that from the regular agenda, then each commissioner would then specify, approve the consent agenda except for the suggestion to remove it or whatever it is.
I guess there could be a substitute motion, or the motion could just fail like it failed tonight.
Yes. Okay, so a substitute motion would be better than that.
In which case,
Or it could just fail.
right, and if I continued, if I had stronger feelings than I had tonight, say, on an issue that I wanted to move to the regular agenda, I would just vote down the entire consent agenda. I would vote no. Right, so this is a similar situation, right? It would just be, so I propose the motion, let's move
Yes.
X item, nobody seconds, I say oof. Somebody
okay.
else proposes the motion to just approve the entire consent agenda, we vote one by one, I vote no.
You can vote however you'd like to vote. But if the motion passes, pass.
So could they split their vote at that point? Could they say, I'm sorry, this is a little in the weeds,
That's
but
all right.
that's what this is for. So could they split their, no.
No,
So
we're not doing split. Nope.
That's the whole point of the
No,
consent
that's the
agenda,
whole
is that you
point, is
don't
not
split.
split it, just to go,
Okay,
if
makes sense.
So,
one or two commissioners vote no, and the motion passes, it passes. Goody, goody.
the one other thing that often happens with consent agendas is like someone wasn't here and meeting minutes are part of it. Are they still going to abstain from that part of the vote or no?
Sure. I don't know. I don't know about that one.
Okay.
I can ask, I will consult with some really intelligent attorneys on that one.
Sweet.
I think I actually kind
Dang
of
it,
like that
there's a curveball.
procedure, a little bit of procedural jujitsu. And I would love if it were codified officially, if that is reasonable, according to our attorneys.
I don't have an hearing impairment, but there really is.
Sorry.
You have to really.
Sorry. I actually really like that bit of procedural jujitsu. I feel
Thank
like
you.
it's
Thank you.
meaningful
Right.
to say, like, I wasn't here, I can't say anything, but I still want to approve the rest of the consent agenda because I'm a cordial person. So
Okay.
I would love if that were actually codified in our policies and procedures if our legal team thinks that that is the appropriate thing to do.
We'll check on it.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Oh, there's another thing I have in here. Just a proposal, but it did outline on the consent agenda during the public testimony, again, that recognized community organizations get 5 minutes and the general public gets 2 minutes.
I mean,
I'm not sure that's equitable. That's for you all. I was thinking from an equity piece, and city council does not operate in that fashion. Not sure, that was before my time here, but I have struck that differentiation and just said comments, a maximum of 2 minutes. Obviously, the chair has the discretion to give any member, any resident, additional time.
I would like to know what some of the more experienced commissioners think on that. Just have you found it helpful, like Commissioner Barry, have you found it helpful to have community chairs have 5 minutes, or do you feel like it's similar to other people?
It can go either way. I do believe if they've submitted comments, they tend to take that 5 minutes to just regurgitate the comments that we've read. But I also feel like they are representing a much larger contingency and a variety of voices as they are collecting that feedback that may require more than 2 minutes. And sometimes the comments are not just regurgitating what the letter they submitted says. So it tends to go both ways in my experience. I think the flexibility of allowing them to have additional minutes is probably appropriate. I think the equity is, I understand what you're saying, but I think fundamentally they are here, if they're a recognized organization, they are here representing a much larger swath of community rather than themselves. And they are also communicating views that may be other than themselves as well. So giving them some extra time to do that has been beneficial.
Yeah, so, thank you, and something, I guess, to ponder, because, the chair always can give more time too. So, think on it, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so are recognized community organizations only those organizations that are neighborhood organizations, or can other interest groups apply to become recognized community organizations?
Any other interest group? It does include community councils, but it could be any recognized group.
Yeah, years ago, the city broadened. It used to only be community councils when I was on one, so prior to this. But years ago, the city broadened who could be a recognized organization. You do have to meet a bunch of requirements with the city recorder's office. If you don't meet those requirements, you're not recognized. But there have been many non-community council groups that have met that. That's the specification of recognized, is that they've met what at the time, two previous mayor's offices had designated as what would qualify a group as a recognized organization. So it's kind of incumbent upon them.
Thank you.
I can bring more information about that too, if it's helpful.
I would be supportive of some way that is maybe less burdensome for a particular speaker to request more time by right. And I don't know what that would be. I would have to think on that for a little bit. But if in some ways you can just, like, in advance of a particular meeting, somehow affirm or declare that you are speaking not just on your own behalf, but on behalf of a reasonably sized group of people, that is that you can have your time extended. That would be like if I were from first principles trying to derive a just process that simultaneously recognizes that we want a degree of equity and to enable people to come together and use their voice as civic organizers. I don't know if anybody else in the state or the country does it that way. I can imagine a lot of risks as well. So I just want to put that out there as, if you stuck me in a room and told me, come up with something, I would probably start noodling in that direction.
I would
think on it.
I would go the other direction. I can imagine so many scenarios where I'd be like, hey, I'm going to represent my entire street. I did, like, the litmus test goes way down. And so sticking with what the city requires, it's not what the Planning Commission requires, it's what the city requires to be a recognized organization, to then at least know they've met whatever the city has required. But I think leaving it up to the discretion of the chair to extend time kind of takes over all that, allows for all of those types of scenarios. And then we're not spelling it out in our policies and procedures. But for instances where Commissioner Rosenfield, if she was chair, would then be able to be like, oh, I think, you should have some extra time. You have the ability to do that.
That's true.
Regardless of their designation as recognized or not. But I think leaving it out is probably a better way to move forward, to allow for that discretion.
And mirror the council. I mean, we were also thinking about the public going to different hearing bodies, right? And having the same consistent expectation. Same consistent expectation at other bodies within the city where the public comes. It's confusing.
Would it be in order for a non-chair commissioner to request that the chair provide a certain speaker more time? No. Okay. That might be a nice to have. It's not a need to have. Just a way to, if any one commissioner is like, this is an insightful commentary, or I feel like I want to hear more.
Okay.
Am I dumb? But the list of recognized community organizations right now on
Recorder's
website is like 4. There's only 4. Like East Bend on here, Sugar House is on here.
They're like 26 or
East
52.
Central's
There
not
are.
up there. There's only 4.
I can bring back some information about recognized organizations, or send you a list of those that are active right now.
Check out the list that's on the recognized
Recorder's
community
office.
organizations on the city attorney's office website.
Yes.
And there's only 4. Like, I know
I
there
don't
are
know.
more.
That's weird. Then
That is weird. So,
there are definitely more than 4.
and I never like check to see when they're like, I'm speaking for East Bench. I'm never like, are your filings
Better
updated and
better
stuff like
file.
that. I never did it.
Keep that active.
But anyway.
Lose a couple minutes.
When I was a community council chair, I thought we should get more time, because we spend so much time talking and thinking and stuff like that. But at the same time, you just get one of your friends to come and you have 4 minutes and you've almost accomplished 5 minutes anyway.
So unless there are any other comments on that ponder it until the next meeting.
I have one,
feel-
Michaela,
Yes.
and that is, we didn't spell out if we want a specific procedure when we have requests to combine time. Do you want to leave that to the discretion of the chair, or do you want to just strictly not allow that? We may want to include that in there. Just give that some thought.
Oh, man, yeah. It's always gotten kind of hairy. Well, sometimes I guess it's worked, but,
Was that,
okay.
did it used to be on there? Amy? Sorry, Commissioner Barry, did that used to
Whatever.
be on there?
No.
It never was?
It was the practice that we did not allow it, but it's not spelled out, and we've had many requests.
COVID
we asked all-
also was tricky, remember?
Which one?
During COVID, when we had electronic meetings, we'd be like,
True.
hey, my husband wants to speak for
I
me
just
too.
think if you want to, I'm just asking you if you want to include that. I'm not advocating either way, but
Yeah, we always said no.
it may be another list of like discretion of the chair if they want to allow it or not, or if we just don't want to allow it. Either way.
Can I make sure I understand what we're talking about, which is if 6 neighbors were to come, they could designate one of them to speak for 12 minutes? Is that what you're saying?
Correct, and they have
Correct.
made that
Yeah,
request in the past.
I don't like,
Yeah.
I don't like that idea.
Yeah, it has been made prior to
Yes,
COVID
yes.
and after, so.
So fun.
If people really want to like unify their arguments like that, they need to negotiate in advance and like have a script that they can hand off one to another.
Exactly.
Exactly. Right. And like that's a barrier to entry for doing that kind of gambit. But if there's enough passion to do that kind of gambit, then sure, go ahead. But somebody you shouldn't vest that power in one person.
Right.
Okay, so any other questions on that? Because I want to let you know, I changed it for the consent agenda. Everyone gets 2 minutes, no matter who you are. And I also changed it for the regular agenda that you'll see in there. Okay. Okay, last but not least, motions. They're so fun.
Can I just jump in and clarify for Commissioner Burrows that on the website, there's a spreadsheet that shows 29 recognized organizations.
I'm on the city attorney's office.
And you might have to, is there a scroll down option?
No, somebody look at this with me, look. For a list of RCOs under meeting time, click here. And then a smart sheet comes up.
Yeah. And that smart sheet scrolls down and to 29.
Am I dumb?
Okay.
Let's look at that after.
Well, yeah, let's maybe do that later.
There's 4, yeah, I
But-
do
I'm
hear
not
you.
dumb.
It is
I don't-
true
I'll
what you
talk
were
to you
saying,
about it.
but let's glance at it after.
Landon,
What?
you're so bossy.
All
I'm
right.
so sorry.
I am on page 14, talking about motions. Please refer to page 14, making motions. Yay. So I've separated this out a little bit, specifying administrative items versus legislative items. All right. You do know that staff gives you those lovely motion sheets that reflect the staff report, and the staff report may contain conditions. But our motion sheet doesn't list out those conditions. It just basically says, based on tonight's discussion, I recommend blah, 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 that you pass it. If you want to apply other conditions, that would be the time. And with the motion sheet. Now, it also talks about legislative items, right? You're recommending something to the city council, like a zone change, right? Motion should state findings at the beginning of the motion. You have motion sheets, everyone. The recommendation may include specific suggestions, not conditions for the council. Suggestions, not conditions. We can't condition the council. Just, it is important because the council doesn't have a set of standards because it's a legislative action. They do have factors to consider. So you are suggesting.
So you're saying on administrative items, the word we'll often use is condition.
Yes.
On legislative items, it will be suggestion. That
A suggestion or recommendation or whatever it is.
that is that's great, and that seems like that is accurate. But if one of us kind of doesn't fall in that framework, is there any like damage? Is it just like a, because I mean, either way they're going to take it or not damage, just like
No, it's fine. I mean,
It
they
seems
know what
like
you mean. It's just that it's very different, right? Because if you want to apply a condition, there has to be a nexus between this, for administrative, there has to be a connection to the condition in your approval. When you're wearing your legislative hat, you're recommending to the council that's going to take that final action, and you can provide them with suggestions or not, and they can take them or not.
okay,
You're not tying it, you're not tying their hands aren't tied back to a standard.
totally, yeah.
Does that make sense? They
Yeah,
have factors.
I mean, it makes sense. It's just,
Okay.
it was the, my brain is going to fall into patterns and say,
It's okay. It's
say
all
the
right.
word condition,
all right.
even though what I mean is a suggestion,
It's
I guess is all
fine,
I'm getting
it's
at.
fine. Any questions about that? Okay. And you'll have more questions maybe later, but I thought that one was worth bringing up. A little bit more clarity on substitute motions.
I have some feedback for you on this one.
What's that?
So on motions, right now, number 36, amending a motion, and this is old language, but I think we need to strike where we say substitute motions, or I mean friendly amendments are requiring the approval of the original motion maker and the person who seconded it. And that's contrary to how those are typically handled.
Well, there's Robert's rules, and then
Is
there's
Robert's
your
rules-
P and Ps.
Yeah. Robert's rules says that the original motion maker is the one who has to accept the friendly amendment or not. And the person who seconded it doesn't have a role in that.
That's Robert's rules.
Yeah.
We loosely
So-
follow Robert's rules. You want to follow Robert's rules? That's up to you all.
No, I'm just saying, so I'm just asking that or maybe just pointing that out, that we have not necessarily been doing it that way because of Robert's rules.
that is true.
I personally think it should not include the seconder. I don't know
Okay.
what's the word I want to use, but
I like
that's,
seconder.
yeah, this, you know what I'm saying.
No, I know. I
And,
get it. I like it.
And so that's like my preference, but,
I lean towards that
and that's
direction, too.
something that maybe that we just can think about.
Yeah, that's fine. I hear you completely. That's up to,
Because now we've been doing it contrary to even our old
no,
language.
I know. I realized that too when I was reading through these. Because I don't read them every day.
So then what if the seconder doesn't,
It's,
they can withdraw their second then, if they don't
If they don't- if-
likewise approve of the friendly amendment?
yeah,
Yeah, they don't have to also approve it, they just could
Right.
withdraw their second.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about how that can play out, if you're saying, oh, the person who, I have this friendly amendment, blah, blah, and the author of the motion says, I agree, and then the seconder is like, no, I don't agree because I'd like it to be like, it just makes it messy.
Okay, well, think
The
on that
the
one.
seconder is perfectly within their rights to say like, I don't agree with that. I'm going to rescind my second. But we may want to spell that out in our policies and procedures. We may not.
I think technically the seconder wouldn't be able to say anything, but if they disapproved of it, they would just vote against it.
There's
But
that too.
Procedurally, the person who made the friendly amendment becomes the default seconder of the new thing in place. So from a overall standpoint, you still have the coverage of it being second because someone has said, if you do this, then I'll approve it, and then go for it.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
Something else
It's
to
hard to
think
be
about.
quiet over here.
We don't want you to be quiet. Come on, help us out here. You have,
I agree with Commissioner Leverett that I think there's almost an inherent second to offering a friendly, in that if the friendly is accepted, yeah, that makes sense to me.
okay.
That's my suggestion.
I mean, it's in there. We can remove it, and honestly, we don't really follow it because Robert's rules, I think, doesn't even make you do it.
I mean, taking Robert's rules out of it, I think
Let's
that's
forget about
cleaner, but that's just my suggestion.
Okay.
The other one I want to bring up is in 37 for substitute motions. And again, I just don't know if we want to spell this out, but when we get to item 4, when it says the motion can be further debated or amended, if the substitute motion fails, do we also want to put in a 5? If the substitute motion fails, you automatically then revert to the original motion, which is how we've been doing it. There's just no like end of like cleaning up if the substitute motion passes. It states that then that replaces the original motion. But if the substitute motion fails, we automatically revert to the original motion.
Right,
I like that.
yeah.
I'm just saying, so if we add
That's-
like
yeah.
number 5 and just kind of then take this to its end of the procedure.
Great. Got it.
This is
Thank
why
you.
we keep you around.
No, don't see that too often. Woo, that'd be spicy. All right.
Scary.
Those are really I think
I mean, certainly, like, all of this breaks down if we're not at least somewhat cordial with each other, and that is the fear. That you do need ultimately a different set of procedures for a antagonistic commission than you would for this commission, where even when we have quite vociferous disagreements with each other, I think we're in general able to not try and bog each other down in procedure. But there are ways that this could just get incredibly deeply bogged down in procedure if somebody is wanting to take that tack. So I want to flag that. I don't want to do anything about that. I just want to say, this is a thing that we need to recognize exists. There's no real way to force people to move on. There's no real way to close debate in any meaningful way other than the chair just asking to. And if the chair can just ask to, then if the chair is antagonistic with the rest of the commission, that also becomes a problem. So
Yeah, I agree with you that civility is the kind of underpinning of everything that is here. So I agree.
And I don't think that's a bad thing right here and right now, but given, for example, the way that the federal government interacts right now, and increasingly people are asking it to interact, they're, be operating in a fully antagonistic mode. I would hate to see how long we stay if we're operating this commission in a fully antagonistic mode. And maybe it's just at that point, if that were to happen, we would need to have a conversation about how to implement a set of policies for dealing with that kind of situation.
Thank you. Those kind of conclude the biggies that I wanted you to think about. Can bring it back. We do have a motion sheet in draft form. But I think let's wait until you all solidify, to Commissioner Berry's point, remove the language for a seconder to a friendly and stuff like that.
I didn't get to talk about it when we actually went over ex parte, and I realized that this is probably going to put me a little bit out there, but I think
Let's talk about it.
I personally am of the feeling, and maybe there is a legal basis for this, but I'm personally of the feeling that the ex parte rules are too strict. That ultimately, the reason we are asked to avoid ex parte communication is to avoid either the fact of or the appearance of an inability to decide justly as part of discussions on the council. And I think that there are situations where we may engage in certain kinds of ex parte communication or publication where we express an opinion or value or desire on a particular matter based on reviewing, based on lived experience, all of these sort of things, that nevertheless may not rise to the level of the person sitting before us doesn't believe that that person is that the person who engaged in that communication is going to be able to make a fair judgment call. And that I worry that if we sort of end up on this side of like, you can't talk about anything at all ever with anybody, which is not, I'm not saying that's fully what this is, but that's sort of what it's approaching. We end up in a situation where the procedure of it comes before the actual reasoning behind why you want to avoid ex parte communication, which to my mind really is, we want people to feel like, and we want people to have before this commission, a fair shake. We want them to trust that we are able to, based on what we read and what we know and what we think, that we're going to be able to hear them out and vote in line with our values and the values of our communities. And to my mind, just saying like, I'm a little worried about this project on Blue Sky doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to do that when I get to the commission. And so I wish, and I suspect that people are gonna say that they disagree, and that's okay. I wish that we had a way of saying, you know, of just encoding that definition. Like, if that communication raises to the level where a reasonable person might have concerns that the commissioner is unable to provide a fair and appropriate hearing to an issue.
I think that in our mindset, like, because this happened recently, it feels bigger than it is. It doesn't really happen, and we didn't need to do it when we did. I mean, we decided to vote that direction, but like, Nick was kind of like, you can do it either way. It's not that big of a deal. I think it is a little bit subjective to what the commission is feeling at the time. And I think that I agree with you that like the optics is the important thing. So I appreciate that. And I don't know that it's going to happen that often. When dealing, if you're speaking about a specific project, not like expressing your political views online or showing up to a protest or something else, but if it's like this specific thing is the thing we're under discussion, if people can point out like, hey, he railed me online, or she railed me online on this, then it gets a little tiny bit gray. So I guess like, I think that I like that we have the framework that we do, and I'm going to read through the kind of edits, but it's good to flag, and maybe we talk about it next time. But I also don't think that it's like that important in the whole grand scheme of the commission.
Right.
So
we just have a nice framework, and you know, you disclose and it goes to a vote.
Well, that disclosing, like requiring the commissioner who did it to disclose it, seems like kind of useless too. Because if you don't think that you said anything wrong and you're fine with what you said, then you just said, I said something, doesn't matter. Nobody knows what you said. Nobody, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of weird. Like, we don't need to have a trial, but it is kind of weird because if you just said, I said something on Facebook and nobody knows what it is, how do they know? Like, do they just think, well, up till now you've been real honest, or you haven't been on, you know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit of a weird
Hopefully they would disclose what they said.
thing.
So I want to say that particular instance, so we have a few things that have been brought up here that I want to clarify. So as commissioners, one thing I've learned, we actually don't get the privilege of always voting on our values or the values of our community. We have a set of standards. We may or may not agree with them. We may not like the box we're put in and how we have to make our decisions, but we don't We're not elected officials that do have that privilege. And so there are often times there's been plenty of, I don't have enough digits, none of us have enough digits collectively for all of the decisions I've had to vote yes on when I didn't even like the thing. But it met all of the standards.
Right.
And I couldn't articulate anything that it didn't meet, but I did not like it. So, you know, when we make our decisions, they're really constructed in that sense of what do the standards say, how have we applied it. Staff evaluate it, they give us their analysis. We are free to disagree with that analysis, but we need to articulate why we don't think that that's correct. And that's really what our role is. When we talk about ex parte communications and what happened this last time, legal had determined his communication was ex parte. So he had an obligation to disclose it. Oftentimes, if you have a conflict, you just say, I have a conflict of interest, I have to recuse myself. Done deal. We've had that plenty of times with commissioners. In this particular instance, legal had already determined, because he brought it up to them, which I think was an ethical decision on his part, that it was ex parte. And so it wasn't just a matter of optics. It was a matter of that. And the city has ex parte standards or requirements because of appeals. And applicants, if we don't follow that based on legal standards, applicants can appeal. And if we allowed somebody who engaged in ex parte communications to participate and vote, we are setting up an item where we would lose on an appeal based on our decisions. And so it's not really about like how we so much think or whatnot. Is this optics? Is this setting up a bad standard? If legal determines something was ex parte, I believe it is our responsibility to, if I'm the person who engaged in it, to bring it forward. And then the commissioners can say yes or no, but if we allow them to continue to participate and it has already been deemed ex parte communications, then we're practically nullifying all of the work we do on that particular item based on a potential appeal. And so it goes beyond like our feelings about being able to talk about these things. So I've always taken the approach, and I, served 9 years on my community council, and Amy Burrows has as well. Maybe not 9 years, but a lot of people in the community.
Right.
And in the beginning, man, they wanted to come to me, what about this and this? And I had to really be very strict.
Right.
I can't talk about this.
Right.
If you want me to vote on it,
Right.
you better not talk to me about it. And I had to do that with my family that lives in Sugar House. So,
Flip side, they don't want you to vote on it.
they what?
Nefarious people do not want you to vote on it.
That never,
You've seen that?
that never came up, but you're right. So it really is a personal decision on this, but I think we have to go back to what our role is as commissioners, and the legal box we have to operate in regarding the standards, and then the process of the items administratively. We're talking about the administrative items that we have final decision on. We don't want to set it up to lose in an appeal. Legal doesn't want that. The city doesn't want that. And I think we need to be more conservative in our views of ex parte communications, and that is our responsibility as commissioners for the administrative items that we are the final decision maker on. Legislative items, we pass it along and they do whatever they want to do. It's on them. And that's my thoughts on this particular one. It's not about optics. It's about the legality of our role and our work and what goes on at the city. So,
Public business in the public. It's not just for administrative, but all your points for that.
Yeah, Commissioner Berry, your point is well taken, but I will note that the last ex parte question we had was about a legislative item.
Yeah, it includes legislative items just as well.
And I guess that's where I'm a little bit stymied, because at that point it's not about protecting ourselves from appeal. It really is about acting in a way and appearing in a way that is ethical. And I am not confident that taking the most strict definition of ex parte communication for those legislative items where we are really making a recommendation, where we are acting on behalf of our community and our values, that it makes sense to fully put ourselves in a position where any communication about that topic anywhere outside of these chambers becomes like, it's concerning, right? Like, there's a point for concern, and I absolutely believe that we should bring it up. But the way this is written, the definition that we have of ex parte, it's like, it becomes almost an administrative item. If you're reading this code, like, we are expected as commissioners, obligated almost, to vote to have somebody recuse themselves if they bring up something that even kind of raises to the standard. And on the topic of legislative items, I am just, and you know, I'm not saying like, oh, we should be as corrupt as we want. That's not, like, I think it's important for us to behave in a way that is ethical. I am a strong believer in that.
That's good.
I am not Robert Moses. But there is a space, I think, for, I have thoughts, I have opinions. I'm able to share those thoughts and opinions, especially on a non-administrative matter. And the people coming before this commission, right? Like, if I say, I will never, ever, 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 ever vote for this, yeah, then obviously, like, nobody's going to come before the commission and believe that I might change my mind. But if I'm like, I don't love this, somebody, you know, that in some ways it might even give, you know, if it's fully public, and maybe this is the problem, so I'm perhaps overthinking things, right? If it's fully public, if it's on Blue Sky, then and somebody sees it, an applicant sees it, they can somehow, you know, they can see, oh, this person has these feelings. This is a feeling on a legislative issue. They're going to try and propose a change. Here's how I'm going to be able to address their concerns in front of the commission itself. I don't know. I'm pondering. I appreciate the different insights on this.
If you discuss an item like 4 months before it comes to us, we don't know if it's going to be legislative or administrative. Like, that particular item could have been either. It just depended on how it fell into so it's hard to say you can make comments about legislative things but not administrative things, because that's not like a clear line in the world all the time. I'm a little wondering about, it is like, this doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter. It absolutely does matter. But it's also like, it's because it was recent, it feels like it matters more.
Matters.
But it kind of, a member must disclose if they believe another member has participated in ex parte communications. That's kind of,
Yeah.
that's kind of funny. Not funny, but that's kind of like, I don't know. That one's a little bit surprising. And then,
I mean, you can call us.
also,
You've fielded many a phone call.
yeah. And then also to say
Parte.
that you have to disclose it to the commission before a vote on the matter. Like, how much do you have to say, or how many questions can somebody ask? Like, what did you say? What forum was it on? How many people responded to that? You know what I mean? Like that. Because if you just say, yeah, I said something about this 4 months ago, that's kind of like no information for the rest of us to decide on.
I think if you have a concern about yourself or a member, you can call me, you can call Nick. If you're not comfortable with us, you can call one of our attorneys. We will coach you through what to say, what to do, take a look at everything, and handle it. And make sure that you disclose appropriately and what that should include. Because we could come up with so many scenarios. I'm coming up with so many scenarios in my mind from working here for so long. So many things.
And if you're not concerned about something you've done, then it most likely will never come up at all. So
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You.
I would not bank on that.
Okay, okay. I rescind my comment.
It could come up. Could be in an article. It could be.
But I don't read this as saying you can't ever speak about a thing months in advance. It says with interested parties, social media, and public forums. That's not a conversation with your neighbor unless your neighbor is an interested party, right? So I don't think it's that high. I mean,
You should be, if there's an item that you know is coming up, you should be discussing it here.
yeah.
Please don't discuss it with your neighbor.
I mean, the whole point of that restriction is honestly, no, I just lost my train of thought. But, because all of the work we do should be in a public setting, right? So if we're having conversations with our neighbors about something that's happening in a different community, we're not doing that in a public setting. And that's kind of the standard as being a commissioner, is like, it's a
Right.
public role. And so our discussions really should be in how public meetings are defined in law, right? And that's not a discussion with my neighbor or my family about something that isn't, how do we all determine who's an interested party? That could fluctuate in various ways, but I really think it boils down to our standard of doing business for the public in a public setting. And that's kind of how I've always looked at it, and why I've always just said I can't talk about that. And it's just been very nice. At one point, everybody got it, and we don't talk about it. And so I don't get put in a position where I have to make a decision that would be different from you and different from what staff or what legal would have decided. It's just been like,
Invite
no.
them, yeah. Invite your neighbor.
And I have had neighbors who have like said, hey, blah, 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 blah about this. And I have replied to them and said, I send your comments into the planner. Here's their email. All of the commissioners need to benefit from reading what you have to say, not just me.
Right.
And because we're doing public's business, I want you all to have that feedback. And that's been my line. And that's just my view, is that we're doing public business. We should do it in a public setting based on how in the law it's defined as a public meeting.
I don't know if it's just an academic distinction, but you're talking about how separating out the conflict of interest and the ex parte part, and it's in my mind at least, this feels more like what we're talking about is conflict of interest, because if ex parte communication is like, again, between people who are interested parties or who have decision-making power, isn't it? Or is that not? It's so it.
It's like talking to your judge before your
Yeah,
judge makes a decision.
exactly. And if it seems weird to me to put under ex parte communication that putting something on a public platform is not letting the public see it, if that makes sense. If the problem is like not getting that something happens outside of this meeting, and so it's not communicated to the public, but the thing you're doing is actually communicating to the public, I think it's still an issue and should be.
Meeting with the public about an item before this body should happen here in front of this body,
Okay.
not necessarily you as a member out on a public forum discussing an item that should be discussed in front of this body.
Yes. No. Like I said, I think it might be an academic thing, but in my mind, that's conflict of interest, not ex parte. But maybe I'm just wrong. I don't know.
It's kind of a secret third thing, to be
Conflict is
honest.
like, you have like,
I think
you make-
I almost feel like, but ex parte out of,
like I said, you're going to be reading these with your coffee every morning for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Pondering.
I was going to say the part about the public forum, public platform, public internet. The piece to distinguish it is all represented parties aren't there. The rest of the board isn't there. We aren't having a discussion. It's something that you're putting out there and getting feedback from and interacting with a regardless if it's open to everybody to see, it's a narrow community at the time.
Yeah.
And it gives the appearance that you're having ex parte communications. You're surveying the public and seeing what people think and doing other things. And so the person who can be harmed by a no vote can feel like they didn't get an opportunity to represent themselves in the public forum that they are entitled to, which is this, not that, not Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever it might be, whatever the conversation is happening, because they aren't represented there. And so that it gives the appearance that every conversation they have to represent themselves and to convince you of whatever it is, it has to be here. And so posting that anywhere else, having that conversation anywhere else, is ex parte communications because of that.
Yeah, and
That's
yeah,
great.
that was really good. But I think one piece that has played out additionally to that, well, extended from that, are the comments that happen in like a social media setting, because you're not controlling the comments. And then who's seen, and like you just identified, the comments become not public on the record, but they can really get interesting. And that becomes part of then like the Pandora's box is how that has played out in the past as well. So
But
there's a lot
ultimately-
of things that are connected to what Richard said.
We aren't going in blind, though, and ultimately this doesn't prohibit us from looking at comments online, which it's just, it's a thing I'm going to be thinking about, I think.
Think about it.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, you got it. The only other thing that I would say is I just want to, and maybe this is like very specific to me, because I have another public role, right, as a member of an organization that is covered by grammar rules. Occasionally I will be in a position of working with somebody in a professional capacity, like what came up last meeting, where I had a discussion about transportation with Salt Lake City staff.
Yeah.
Because I am the subject matter expert in that, wearing my other hat.
Amen.
And I think I was told that was acceptable. It doesn't seem like the rules laid down here make that clear. Let's see, standards of ex parte, standards of, I'm not seeing the conflict of interest.
Yeah, I think Lila makes a good point in that distinction, because I think you brought it up and we all were like, no, you're fine. No, that's not, you didn't run afoul of any like thing ethical that I would think of. But I don't think it's bad to list that out if you're speaking with staff, because it can go into the public record and in a professional capacity for your occupation. It's, and maybe you want to make that distinction, but I think that that communication is not ex parte at all. And I don't know if you feel like you need to spell it out or not, but yeah, when she brought it up, I thought, well, that's fine. And I still think that's fine, because you're providing your expertise on a very specific part of a whole thing, and staff has come to you based on that. And
Professional expertise.
and that's
at your role.
and that's, you're not making a decision or anything, like you're not putting it out to the public. So I feel like there is a distinction there that is
Yes.
good to bring up, but totally acceptable.
I mean, there's another thing, and this I probably will actually end up recusing myself for, but we'll see, right? Like I occasionally will have conversations about transit or transportation with a planned project. There's an upcoming planned project where I ended up in a conversation about, like protecting transit
With the applicant?
with the applicant. And I think that is where it gets even more fuzzy.
So I'm wondering, and you're probably one of the few people this will ever come up for in
Yeah.
terms of that, if that's not just a situation where you can go to Michaela or Nick
Right,
or
you could
say,
just have a special meeting about all the
yeah,
situations you run into. I'm not privy to all of them,
Okay.
And then management can be like, you should bring that up to the commissioner. They can say like, yeah, we're good.
Okay.
And then it doesn't have to always rise to.
And if
feeling
you
you have to put
recuse
it out.
yourself, no one has to vote on it. Right?
Well, but
If you just say, I don't,
right, like last time, I didn't believe it would be appropriate to.
Well, if you're going to
myself.
recuse yourself, it's because you have a benefit coming to you based on a certain outcome. So if you were a lawyer and your client could benefit from this, you would need to recuse yourself.
Well, but it is ex parte, right?
But what are you going to benefit by giving advice to a client, to an applicant in your professional capacity?
I don't think I will. I'm just
That's what I'm- yeah.
going by the text here. It doesn't actually talk about benefits, and that's what I brought up at the very beginning, right? Like it's not about benefit; it's about
No, it did somewhere.
the
It
appearance
talked
of
about
involvement.
benefiting.
Well, no, so that
Chris, talk about
for
benefits.
conflict of interest, it has to do with benefit, but for ex parte, it doesn't have to do with benefit. It
No,
has to do with
they're different.
communication
Right.
of any sort, and that is where I'm like, okay, but when I'm wearing my UTA hat, I want to make sure that I'm in a position where I can fulfill my duties to my employer and also make sure that I am not engaging with parties in a way that
So as a suggestion, Michaela, and further thought, I think there are two ways to handle this. One, spell it all out.
Yeah.
Or two, just say if you have to interact with staff or an applicant in a professional capacity, you can disclose that to the director or the assistant director, and they can decide if you need to escalate it or not. And then there's just those two ways to really handle that so that it's addressed.
Yeah.
And Michaela, maybe you can decide which way staff is comfortable with going.
yeah.
Okay, I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good stuff. All right, that's all I got. Thank you. We'll chat again.
okay, thank you.
I have one more question about these, actually. Sorry, I know this conversation's gone on longer than. The motion to reconsider thing, I think, is weird. And I just want to understand how you think about this. Sorry, it's page 15, the bottom of page 15. But the idea that,
Yeah,
that
to,
we
like,
could
recall a
vote
vote.
to approve a thing, and then 2 weeks later, essentially, it's not a true, firm, actionable decision until minutes are approved 2 weeks later, or if there's not a quorum 2 weeks later, a month later, and during which time the applicant has paid legal fees or done additional architectural drawings at great expense, or
Yeah, it's to recall it back before the minutes are approved. Let's say someone makes a motion at 11:30 at night, and then everyone votes on it, and they were confused that that wasn't really the action that they wanted to take. Oh my God, Casey, what other times have we recalled?
I can tell you, we
Thank
did
you,
2
yes.
recalls.
Yes, I
in
was like, what happened,
in my
Commissioner
tenure.
Berry?
Prior to that, you're on your own.
I have no
But,
memory.
a commissioner did it once because they felt very adamant about a position that was contrary, and they wanted us to reconsider it, and it didn't pass. They just felt like, I want you to reconsider
Okay, that
this
was one.
prior
Then
to the
there was
motion.
another one.
The other time, we failed to follow proper procedure on, I can't remember the item
I
at
can't remember
all.
what it was, though. It was
And it was a
something-
community member that alerted you all.
Okay.
Two, that we failed this particular procedure for something. And so we were directed that
Yes, we had.
the reconsidering it had to, that was the first time we did it. So it had, a commissioner felt very passionate about a specific thing we had voted on the prior meeting, but the other one was procedurally. But nobody realized it until the community member brought it up.
Remember what it was.
I don't remember, it was Cindy.
Snafu, but we did, you're right.
Yeah, and we were in COVID, so we had to do it. We were all remote when we did it. Was to reconsider that vote so that we could do it again and follow the proper procedures.
Yes. Does that make sense?
it does
Solid,
make
but
sense.
we can't let it go on and on and on. It has to be like at the next meeting
Yeah.
or actually before the
Yeah.
approved minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know that
makes
it
more sense to
clarifies
me.
your worries,
Well,
but-
it doesn't clarify my worries. On the procedural one, I think, like, if somehow the decision is not defensible or legally defensible because procedure wasn't followed, sure. But if it's just, I had some feelings about a vote I took, I just don't think it's appropriate. But Anyhow, just thought I'd raise it because
I-
it seemed odd to me.
Okay.
Yeah, again,
I
I
know.
think
Really-
this is
it's
another
really
really
rare.
rare one. It's in my 7.5 years, it happened twice.
Yeah.
It's really rare. In my 4 years, it happened once, and it was me. Where you had like voters' remorse, where, sorry,
No, I don't think
didn't
you
mean
had
to vote.
remorse. You voted the way you wanted to, but the rest of the whole vote didn't, and you wanted us to reconsider that.
But you can't, if you like vote with the losing side, you can't be
Nope.
like, let's talk about it again.
Correct.
You know
Nope.
what I mean?
True.
Nope.
You
You
gotta
have
be a
to-
winner. Gotta be a
The
winner.
winning side.
Correct.
No, really, that's really true.
It is true. Yeah.
Leverett. Laughing. Ha! Bring your notes for next time. We will not vote on this tonight. I don't think we need to vote on not voting on this tonight, but we're not going to vote on this tonight. All in favor say aye. We're not voting. Thank you. And then, are we good?
I'm so good.
Bring your notes for next time. You have some things you were going to check on?
Well, if you have notes too, in the meantime, email
Or
Michaela.
Email them
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. So
have an
a
email
conversation,
address.
if I'm looking at a staff report and I'm like, wait a second, that one seems weird. I can email, I can call, I can talk to the staff person and say, where is that? Like, can you show me the condition that lines up to? I can call and
Yes.
say,
Please.
like, you can have those conversations.
Yes.
Conversations like with staff are totally fine.
Yes.
You can have, if you want to like wordsmith a text amendment, you can do that outside of this meeting. If you call the commissioner and say like, hey, this language doesn't seem like it totally makes sense, and then they can explain it to you, or you can talk about it or change it or whatever, right? Like, that is fine. That's fine. You can do that. We should do that, because we shouldn't just walk in and surprise staff with like, oh, I have all these problems that you've never heard about before, I think.
Yes, thank
Right?
you.
Okay, thank you. Everybody
Thank
do
you.
that. And now it's time to vote for a new chair and vice chair, because we are term limited right now. So, anybody want to make any motions?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that Landon is the chair.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Scott, and a second by Commissioner Leverett, for Landon Krasik to be chair of the Planning Commission. Any action on that motion? Okay, we're going to vote. Last time I alphabetized votes, I missed somebody, so I'm not doing that. Commissioner Rosenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrett,
Yes.
Commissioner Barry,
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett,
Yes.
Commissioner Krasik,
Yes.
and me too. So congratulations, you need a chair for the next year. Any motions for vice chair?
I would like to make a motion that Commissioner Scott is the vice chair. That's my motion.
Any second?
Second.
You accept?
Like to make a substitute motion? No, yeah, sure. Yes.
That is spicy. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Krasik and a second by Commissioner Leverett, right? Did I hear your voice? For Brian Scott to be the vice chair. Any action on that motion or other activity? Okay, we're going to vote. Commissioner Krasik,
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett,
Yes.
Commissioner Barry,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrett,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows, yes. Okay, that's unanimous, so congratulations. See you next time. Yeah, our next meeting's in 2 weeks, so come back.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
potholes are no exception, because like they say, potholes are a whole lot of trouble. In this week's interview, we spoke with Juan from Streets, as he